Aloha. This video I wanted to address something that is very obvious to me and some people who observe this channel, people that are close to me too. This idea of the truth community or truth information, and all based upon largely the lies that the system has sold to us being revealed. So there's a whole other side of truth that comes from the inside. That is an interpretation of the understanding, overstanding, and understanding of how those things are compatible, like in reference to masculine is not equal to the feminine. Masculine is compatible with the feminine, and they work in a system in many different ways. So you have all these different systems in this dualistic universe that work in different forms of different dances, different songs, different whatever you want to call it, colors, flavors, frequencies, vibrations. They're all a different holographic reflection of the same thing, the same idea that is off and on, the whole light and dark duality. Because outside of that, the concept that we do understand is some kind of intelligence that exists within how we interpret ourselves, or whatever that individualistic idea of a soul is, and so on and so forth. The complexities on through there, but beyond that, some kind of central source of intelligence that is not necessarily a living or a bushy hair white dude, in the clouds and something like that. You see how cartoon that is, basically like Santa Claus. So nothing like that, actually, something more complex. So your reflection of God will be a representation of your reflection of yourself, if you really want to get into it. So if your interpretations of, or your relationship with that understanding of what you call God is based upon pictures and fairy tales and these certain a book, like you see how this is kind of orchestrated like a school. Like this is like these who put these teachers up there in charge of this school we call the Earth Realm. Because this goes into the last video I was talking about, how you think. When you start to interpret flat Earth or the not heliocentric universe, it's starting to not program, but reassemble how you think. So what you think about is now not taking up as much energy as it used to, because what you think about is now able to relax into a space, and now the energy can be focused into, I guess the closest way to explain it would be higher states of momentum or movement, or processing. So say for example, yesterday, in like an animation, yesterday you used to process something from using so much energy because you had an emotional attachment or some kind of link to that, or whatever it is. I'm just using examples, but growing emotionally helps you grow spiritually. So if you learn how to process your emotions from a higher state of spiritual awareness, you'll be able to function and process more of your life and your daily activities more efficiently, for one example. But also make use of the time from a higher process that, you know, basically doesn't, it's not this, it's not in the same it's not in the same, what's the word, closest word to that? It's not in the same ballpark. You know, I will use that terminology. It's a whole different ballpark. Yeah. I guess this is as close as I can get to. You're in a different. So, like, you're in a different wind. You're in a different field. That whole everything. So, reason why I'm showing you this right now is because this is what we have been told to think. This is what we have been told to process in many different ways. This comes from the authority of, so this is a good example of the Travel Channel, because I was just skimming along and I saw this Mysteries of the Museum, and they were talking about basically like the the coolness of Thanksgiving, like the origins of Thanksgiving, how Abraham Lincoln had to sign some kind of proclamation in for the day of Thanksgiving, and it was written up by this lady, and they wrote Thanksgiving off in this wonderful pilgrim, you know, settler's story, as if, you know, the other interpretation, which is, I would argue the majority of people, I would give at least people that on some space to realize the just disgusting nature of Thanksgiving from just a baseline. If you want to even start, this is why I say it's so important to get into what you call a human, the definitions of what a human acknowledgement. What do humans acknowledge the fuck is going on in society? Is that part of being human? You know, so what has been done with the way we process our reality is we have been bombarded with an idea of who we are based upon who we are not. This is what the whole so-called white interpretation of reality is, because people call themselves, like, you ask them, yeah, so what are you? Oh, I'm a white guy, you know, whatever, you know, that's an actual thing, you know, because they'll say real quick, oh yeah, it was a black guy, he did it, he ran off that way, he was in a black hoodie, you know. they'll really lock that down, because it's a differentiation between them and us. This is for the slave catchers. The origination of the police officers was the slave catchers. They were the middle people to enforce the authority of the crown, you know, ultimately, like on all the crowns of this reality, but to, you know, to put it in one big ass bowl. But all of the thought processes of this reality have been packaged for many generations. And the reasons why the not heliocentric interpretation of this reality called flat earth, the reasons why it's so triggering for a lot of people is because it cuts directly into the how of you processing this reality, how you think. So it really cuts down the authority of, you know, astronauts, which is science, and Neil deGrasse Tyson looks like a fucking clown now. So, you know, all these people, like, they people prided themselves, like, I'm not separating myself from that either. I used to have all those, like, those universe TV shows, and like memorized, and I used to know all that stuff, like how many moons was around, you know, Saturn and Jupiter and all this other stuff. And like, damn, like, this is some, like, in my world at that time, the person that I was, you know, that was important stuff, right? So, and it was all because the authority of what I called intelligence which was gift wrapped from the same individuals who created the intelligence of the individuals that created the colonial educational system that, you know, keeps you in a thought process of how you think. Because as long as you are controlled by how you think from what you think about, then, that's how you can enslave yourself. So we are conditioned constantly with this idea of who we are based upon who we are not. Let me get more specific about that, because we have a great idea of who white people are. Look at this. You have an amazing idea of what you don't know anything about beyond like all you know about is Egypt, the medieval times, and the industrial age, and maybe some Thor type, whatever kind of God connections, and that's it. You know how loose that is. All these holes. That's about like as deep as all these TV shows like ghost shows and all this other. It's the same shit. This is the truth community, which is largely just white people in that consciousness, are seeing the truth, are seeing truth with the same kind of eyeballs that they was looking at the mainstream media, like these travel channels. It's just a big ass TV show. There's no processing of how there as a foundation. So it's just like, oh yeah, this is just fun and games. It's just flat and that's that. And we're gonna have ourselves a good old convention and talk about this like do you know what the fuck you to this? That's just a proof of them not knowing what the fuck is really, what they're really talking about. What's really at stake here? It's the whole fucking, it really breaks it down. It puts things in perspectives. It really, like I said, it shows where you're coming from. Really, like when somebody asks you, that's why I don't really talk about flat earth too much with a lot of people in person, because if I do, I'll say it real quick, and then I'll just be like, hey, I mean, this is not really a discussion type thing. I'm not really trying to discuss this. I've broken this shit down, for many fucking hours. I don't want to go through this no more. So if I do, it'll just be kind of like a quick little, like, did he say that? Like, oh shit, what? For real? Like, yeah, hey, that's as far as I can go. So I kind of leave it there, because like it really is up to the individual for whatever they're gonna look into. So excuse me. Anyway, look at the trend of this travel channel. Like, so back to what I was saying. We know who we are based upon who we are not, and we also know who we are based upon what we are told what we are from the people who are not us. You know what I'm talking about. So when you are told you are something constantly over and over again, like when you know that the black guy is going to be the first one to die in a movie, you know what that does psychologically to that being a knowing thing, and then that's one level of consciousness. Then to have another level of consciousness where it's just a joke, and then nobody talks about it, and then okay, so that's one level of consciousness. So another level of consciousness is not only do they not talk about it, but it's a non-issue. The magic of that perspective existing, and then existing in reality, because that's the silver screen. In the gold screen, the bodies, the policemen are taking the people out based upon the programmings of the silver screen and the educational screens from the public education system, which is just a pre-prison program. Like, hope you don't make, like, it's an escape mechanism. Like, you're constantly having to escape for survival. And it's just an agreement that goes on and on and on and on. And the only thing that the system does is it constantly reassures you that it's going to get better, and they're gonna do better, but they really have nothing. They have nothing, and they are responsible. They are not responsible for nothing for you at all. Like the system was, it's built like a casino. You wouldn't go into a casino and get angry at the house for winning all the time. You played, like, it's a thing that the Travel Channel and it's an agreement. It's a game that's played. So the whole realm is a game that we play. And this is what we're told. Mysteries at the Museum is a television show that talks about, on this one show that I was listening to, was talking about the pyramids and, you know, hinting towards aliens and so that other stuff. So this is the programming to show you that this is the right way to think about reality. This is the way you're supposed to perceive reality. You perceive reality from this perspective that is normal. And that's what white is. White is normal. If you are not white, you are abnormal. This is why we are all one. The rainbow flag in the LGBT community has to be pushed so hard, because they're jumping from white supremacy to the polar opposite of that. That's a far jump. So there has to be a whole bunch of believable little pit stops in between there. So they start with the civil rights movement, then they hit you with the technology and the MTV, and then the music is all universal. There's rock and roll, you know, and then white people stole their rock and roll from black people, and then, you know, that's just accepted too anyway, because why? Because who gives a fuck anyway? They don't care about us anyway. So they'll just steal that, steal the culture, turn it into theirs, and then they'll make Pandora radio, and then they'll turn Michael Jackson radio on Pandora radio, and then they'll put Justin Timberlake in there on Michael Jackson radio and make it seem like this is all equal, this is all the same stuff now. And there's your universal music and your universal education and your normal education, your normal music. This is what pop culture is. And they get their people that they have bought off and sold with their little secret societies and systems here and there. They get all their friends to sell the same story to the people over and over and over again, to keep the house always winning. Because as long as the people who buy into that house, it's literally like buying into a house. You buy a house and then you're part of that game. So, and this is very obvious for people who have been in the military, because you come to that conclusion when you sign that contract to go into the military. You have a term, you have a responsibility, like inherently, like right out of high school, I had that responsibility. I never even thought of that. So I had really been like grown up at like very, very early, like growing up to the space of being kind of separated from this realm in one moment, like in a, you know, signing a contract, you know, being like, oh, I'm going to be in the army now. What the fuck does that mean? It means you can't fucking move. Like you can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. Like you are, like, you do what you are told. You are basically a number to be shipped and molded and like broken down and shaped and molded into whatever kind of thing that they want you to be. And if you don't have any like original foundations to hold on to, you will be broken. So I had very strong foundations from an early age, and then coming into this space, it wasn't even, into the military, it wasn't very difficult to see the bullshit that's been played, because you know, it's just that the military, the way the drill sergeants talk to you, that's just a street talk. You know, because they have to talk to you, they got to try to be like a fatherly connection. It has to be, it's like in a military, it's like an authoritative family relationship. That's actually what it kind of is, to create that, you know, that camaraderie. I don't want to say fake camaraderie, but when it's built around bullshit, it's not far-fetched to say fake. I mean, but the camaraderie is very real. But when, you know, your camaraderie is, you know, geared towards protecting like Thanksgiving and Santa Claus and shit, I mean, it doesn't, when you see what I'm saying, it doesn't fucking matter anymore. Like, it's really some bullshit. But in that moment, you know, your brothers and your sisters who are, you know, in in that world the same way that you have in other worlds, you know, that's real shit. So that's the realness that I wanted to talk about. Like, that's the truth that's outside of the truth community, because the truth community is ran by a particular normal consciousness now. This is what I said. It's normal to talk about the truth dealing with aliens and anything Alex Jones says and all this other stuff. But as soon as you start talking about racism, white supremacy, which is a truth that the so-called black conscious community is very much aware of, this obvious shit. I've mentioned many a times to read the Dr. Francis Cress Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers, to get just like a baseline understanding of, you know, what this means. This is an actual language of this realm that people are really downplaying, that exists in and throughout the psychology of, you know, even the truth community. Like how, you know, so this is an example of this. I just said, like, in the so-called truth community, it's very rare to hear anybody in the truth community talking about the truth of racism, white supremacy existing in the powers of the so-called powers that be that everybody talks about, with the Illuminati and the Masons and all the Freemasons, all this other stuff, and all these complexities of who the bad guys are and all this shit, you know, like quietly in the corner, people, as soon as you say something like, hey, don't you be saying anything about white people. We are good old-fashioned Americans. Look at all these goddamn TV shows we have. We're fucking amazing. We're everywhere. It's just amazing. Look, we got Toy Hunter and Making Monsters and Food Wars and Bridget Sexiest, whatever the fuck that is, Mysteries of National Parks, and we even got a black guy. His name is Donnie Tackles. His name is not Donnie Tackles. Oh, Donnie Tackles the Globe. Oh, God. What the fuck? This is horrible. What a horrible, horrible situation this is. This is silly, man. These are some silly ass motherfuckers. So, yeah. This is goofy. Look at this motherfucker. It has a literal amusement park, like a roller coaster around his fucking head. Jeez. This is silly. So, yeah. So, the most obvious truth, like, like flat earth, the most obvious truth in and around flat earth is how white racism, white supremacy, with this illusion called white people, exists in and throughout the so-called powers that be mainstream system, as pop, as normal, connected to the authority of so-called intelligence that lied to the whole fucking world. You can't mention, you can't paint a face even though that face is in your face every single moment of the fucking day. You can't talk about it. White is the color that cannot be named. It is the thing that cannot be mentioned. Whiteness in the realm.